there's so many different types of property management. Are you coming after HOA property managers? Are you coming after, which
There's
doesn't
two
make
types of
sense?
property managers, Tommy.
Okay.
There's Chambers Theory,
there's
and there's
everybody.
everybody else.
There's the level I am on, and there's a whole nother level that I'm going to too. Danny, welcome again. Great to have you on the Real Estate with Intelligence podcast, and love to just chat a little bit about what's happening in real estate this spring 2024 here. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing out in the market right now?
Tommy, always good to be here. What I am experiencing in the market right now is a lot. There's a lot going on. I think there is activity. Buyers are very, very cautious getting in to purchasing. And I think we're about to hit this window of like explosion from, I would call it about now, April. So April 1, April Fool's Day, to I would say August. It's going to be crazy. So I'm seeing inventory start to trickle back on. Inventory's up a little bit and just kind of in the DMV. Obviously, certain pockets are still just almost nothing.
Tight inventory.
Super tight. But yes, buyers are getting ready. And I think now that the holidays are done, I'm in discussion with tons of them, lots of them teed up, ready to go, pre-approved. And I think it's just a matter of getting out there. But I think that's what we're all kind of anticipating, because we were all anticipating in 2023 that we'd be way busier now, just collectively as a group. So there's certain people, certain teams are, just kind of doing their thing, crushing. But I think the overall kind of vibe is what I'm giving to you right now.
So you talked about caution with buyers so far to this point this year, which is a little late in the year. Usually you see that buyer activity pick up a little bit earlier in the season. Where is that caution coming from, and why is it extending to now? And it also sounds like, why do you think it's about to be, the caution is supposed to be dropped and get really picked up in activity?
Well, I think the big thing is rates. Everyone's trying to see what's going to happen with them and predict those. You also have, I'm working with a few buyers who are in rentals. And so kind of the seasonality of the rental is, April, May, June-ish, July. That's when the leases are up. Mm-hmm. So we have people trying to time that. And you have a lot of people who are tired of paying rent. Because despite job reports, despite the economy, despite the soft landing that we're in right now, or that still may be coming, we don't know, DC is very robust in its offerings of jobs, and people make a lot of money. So I think we're starting to see people just get out of waiting for interest rates to drop. They're tired of being renters, and they're ready to go. And these are people who I've been talking to for a while. So I just think the message is finally clear based on their experience. It's not someone telling them that they should buy, and I think that's a lot of what you're seeing.
It's interesting. So so the caution is mostly surrounding interest rates and trying to figure out where they're headed.
Everyone wants to time it. You have to, what I forget, we talked about like the numbers, like what are the numbers? My house that I bought in 2021, now I think it's like the payments double, because 2.75, 2.8 interest rate. Now you're at 8. I mean, it's like, so I think people just, and we talked about, people just gotten comfortable with the fact that this is what it costs now. And that's just life. You just have to accept things.
So it normalizes again.
Yeah, it's just, and it's not, and the Fed just came out and they said we'll see the rates drop 3 cuts, but it's not happening anytime soon. I think it's good. I think it's good for everybody. The thing that's weirding me out the most as a real estate agent, someone who looks at the market is in it, is prices are still going up kind of crazy. That's the thing that I haven't gotten right.
Well, I think it does show the impact of interest rates and their influence in the real estate market. And it's like, well, yeah, duh. But at the same time, it's like, well, we know that buyers are trying to time it. But you already indicated, hey, there's limited inventory. And actually, the interest rates being what they are has actually affected inventory. And from what I'm seeing more people say, I don't want to sell my house right now because I've got a 2.75% interest rate on the house that I'm living in, and to drop that to buy something else. And it's a compounding effect, right? You have less people willing to sell because they're trying to hang on to that good interest rate. And you have other people that aren't sure that they're ready to buy, because if they do buy, they're going to be buying with a higher interest rate, and they're trying to time that. But there's also not the benefit of, well, prices are coming down a little bit because there's just not as much inventory. So there's still that pressure of demand on supply, and a higher cost per dollar borrowed at the same time.
Spot on.
So what other trends are you seeing? I mean, obviously there's the interest rate trend. What other trends are you seeing in the market? Like what are buyers, what are they looking for today that they weren't necessarily hot on 2 years ago?
What are they looking for that they weren't necessarily hot on for 2 years ago? Well, that's a tough one.
Or what
That's a
buyers
tough
really
one, but
want in the
I'm
marketplace?
gonna say this is interesting. You see a lot of homes coming up for sale that were purchased 2 years ago. That's interesting to me.
They were purchased 2 years ago.
Yeah, so homes that were purchased 2 years ago are now going back on the market. And why is that happening? Like more than you would think, right? Because you think everyone got in at these low interest rates. What's happening? Like why? Like, so what are they going for? We ask ourselves the same questions. I think as far as trends, the number one trend is people want move-in ready.
Move-in ready.
The other trend is people want a house that's $500,000 more than what they can afford.
Well, that's always true.
And that's like, so that's still the same, and that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
But it's the move-in ready piece. You're not seeing people want to buy places and do work. You're just not seeing it like you used to. And I think when I say 2 years ago, people just snatch up whatever they could, and they'd be like, "Oh, we'll just put this on. We'll do this. We'll rent this." It's not happening as much.
Are you familiar with the walkability score? I think it's
of course
a trademark by Redfin, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you see many people asking about or looking at referencing walkability score when in their searches?
Yeah. I mean, I talk to people about it all the time. It's a personal thing. It's more normally my people who are coming from out of state, who are used to, whether they're New York, they're California, they're Florida, right, Miami. They're used to walking, and they go, well, I want to be somewhere where I can walk.
So it's a valuable tool to reference when you're trying to understand the commute and what's available nearby the residence you're looking to buy.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably helpful to use that score more, but I don't use it just because I know where I sell. So I can, when people tell me what they want, like they want to walk to a coffee shop, I know what they mean. And I'm like, even though you technically could, 2 miles is too far for you to walk to a coffee shop, right? But there's a nice trail that gets you there.
Right.
But kind of understand that. So yeah, no, people definitely want to understand that.
And do you think there's, in a similar capacity, one of the things that Chambers theory is going to be developing is an algorithm to measure houses by their sustainability score instead of walkability score. Do you see a future where people are going to be more and more interested in those types of homes, residential homes, like the actual effect of their home in terms of energy efficiency, environmental impact, and these types of things? Or do you think that it's more about buying the things, like a walkability score is more about the external relating to the property? And what I'm talking about is a sustainability score where what the property is relates to that individual property.
That's really cool. I think it will be neighborhood by neighborhood. And I think that's how you're going to figure it out. So if you're talking about, so you're going to have like on your listing, you will have this thing dialed in, and it'll be like, hey, these are all the things that kind of meet this criteria, thus giving it 20% or thus giving it 97%. I think it'll matter for certain neighborhoods because those neighborhoods behave that way, and I've lived in those neighborhoods. So I just think it's a case by case thing. I think you're too far ahead of it, which is good though.
Wow.
I do. I don't.
So you see it more as a community value.
It's a community value. Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't. I just think there's too many things people aren't going to care about this until their street is on fire. Okay. That's how people are. So I think for certain people it's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
But the way you'll have success with it, or the way it'll be very attractive, is if there's a dollar value assigned to it, which I'm sure you're going to do because you're a smart guy. Because I think people, as in my previous career, and sometimes still dabble in it, as you know, with certain clients, people want to know utility costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that is where that's what my brain went to, the sustainability. They're not going to care about the environmental impact as much as they're going to care directly about their pocketbook. And if there's a reflection to their pocketbook, I think it becomes very useful.
It's the alignment of the value to them in the
Mm-hmm.
sustainability aspect.
Yeah. And then I think neighborhood to neighborhood, some people just be like, oh my God, that is so cool.
It's just so interesting because if we go back to the walkability score, it's like I don't drink coffee, believe it or not. Like, and I'm one of the few humans my age that doesn't drink coffee, but it's like, well, the walk, oh, great. Like it's a quarter mile to the 3 coffee shops. Like that actually has no value to me. So if the walkability score is high because of that, that actually doesn't make me want to pay more for the property, right?
What are you drinking if you're not drinking coffee, bro?
I'm a smoothie guy.
Smoothie?
Yeah, I like to make my organic smoothies.
Ashwagandha, putting that in there.
No,
Putting
like
creatine,
the
protein.
acai.
Acai. All right,
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and then just some protein and I'm also like known as leftover dad in my house, so I will get like oh my gosh, if the kids don't eat the blueberries and the raspberries by tomorrow morning, they're gonna go bad. And I don't want to throw them out, so
That's perfect.
so I'll wash them off and
Throwing
I'll throw
food
them in a
out's the
smoothie.
worst.
So I throw them in a smoothie and I have kind of like a healthy fresh fruit smoothie before they go bad. So yeah, I eat a lot of leftovers. My smoothies are famous because sometimes some interesting things show up in there. Just so I don't have to throw out the food.
I like that. Sustainability.
So big trend change happening in real estate right now. We got National Association of Realtors was sued, and there's a big time settlement coming up and in place with regards to how realtors approach working with buyers and sellers and who pays for a commission. And it's been a big topic. I'm sure that there's a lot of different approaches to this thing, but I'm curious as to how you're seeing, what do you think is how that's going to play into the effect of buyers' mindsets, especially while they're trying to time, you said they're trying to time it with interest rates. Are they going to try and time it are they waiting to see what the changes in the real estate industry with the realtor profession and other brokers are happening? Or, what do you think is going to be the effect in the buyer's psychology of this? And then we can talk about the seller's psychology after that.
So right now, there is no real change with the buyer psychology that I'm aware of at all. And it's shocking how few people even know about this, like this settlement. So I sent out an email to my sphere, my people, just kind of touching base on this. And I've heard from a few people, no changes have happened because the way I operate is I always have a buyer agency signed, and I always explain to them my fee, how it gets paid, how I operate. So I'm very transparent. So there's no real change. The change that what you're referring, or what everyone's referring to through the news, if they have watched it, is like a lot of the headlines are the 6% commission is gone. This will change how real estate agents get paid. And it's amazing to me because they're news outlets and they like don't read anything. Because if you actually read, I asked you, I did not read the settlement. We've had extensive meetings with our brokers and all the top people, and we've really understood it. We've read a ton of stuff. So let me be clear, I've not read the settlement. Mm-hmm. However, what is in the settlement does not change how real estate agents get paid. It basically brings up what has always been the case, in that they're just making it very clear that it's very negotiable. And in fact, we're just going to do it a little differently because this should make everyone feel better. It's very strange. It's very strange. And we've known about this because, we have connections and colleagues and people in the DOJ. So there's been whisperings of this for years. We've always kind of known. So here it is. And nothing's really changed. So for the buyer, you should have a buyer broker signed, and you should understand how your buyer agent is going to help you navigate this process. And you should understand what they charge, and you should know that. Two, well, you're talking about buyers, so we'll stay there. I would say it would be very upsetting to me if I were a buyer and I didn't have an agency agreement signed, and then I found out that I needed to pay my agent.
Yeah,
Where I
getting
was just
caught in that transition.
yeah, where I was just understood.
Yeah.
When what people also need to remember in 1993, I think Bukowski was the last name, and that could be wrong, but it's Minnesota. That's when buyer agency was implemented, and it was implemented for the exact same reason, which is very, very funny.
Right.
And this lady bought a house from Adina Realty in Minnetonka, and she was represented dual agency.
Mm-hmm.
They told her it was her own agent, but it wasn't.
Right.
Adina worked for the seller.
Yeah.
And she bought the house. She felt like it was a midnight deal where they were just trying to get the commission. And what was misrepresented was a spigot, which was represented as a sprinkler system. And that's how this lawsuit started. Like,
Yeah.
or like meaning like that's how buyer agency started. And the buyer agency is a very good point, but what's very intriguing about it, I know I'm getting really long-winded here, and I know you have thoughts, but if you look at the remarks in like a Chicago Tribune and Washington Post article, it's like the same remarks that we're making as real estate agents now about that. It's like, so it's the same thing. So it's hilarious to me.
Yeah, no, it's to be able to say, okay, well, we know that the greatest constant in the universe is change, right? To not recognize that, hey, it's not going to be perpetual in terms of the laws of the land. In fact, the very thing that changed into what it is the very thing that's changing into something different again. Because there are different perspectives on the same question. There's different approaches and solutions, and how people feel about something, same set of circumstances, people feel differently towards. You just got to it depends on how much they get their energy up over or anger up about making a big change. And what I'm also interested in is, you hit on, okay, this makes it a lot more about negotiation. That's what it always has been, which is why I like that this is a national thing instead of a local change that's different from another market, because when you have a national change, at least it's going to create, whatever it goes to, it will create eventually more awareness as from a national picture, instead of, oh, it's different in California than it is in Virginia, than it is in DC, than it is in Maryland. It becomes much harder to go locale to locale when there's big changes, when the buyers in the market, they are moving from state to state. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, it's not always, but when to make those changes and have to feel, oh my gosh, like the way that real estate happens is very different here than in another place. There already are enough differences, but you don't want the whole process to be different. You want it to be a more nationalized picture if possible. But it's just not that way in the rental world. And in our region, the DMV region, we use the MLS here, and it has created a lot of efficiency in the rental market. It has helped make landlords' individual homes more accessible to people that are looking for single family or detached homes, townhomes, individual condos, because now what the MLS did is it created equal marketing power alongside of like the big apartment complexes. And if you think about it, if I'm a business and I've got 50 apartment complexes in the DC region, I can afford a lot more marketing to draw more tenants to be more aware of my products if there is no MLS or Zillow providing options for renters. The addition of MLS made it, which what Zillow used to feed off of, and they still have alignment in that. But it used to be much harder as the individual homeowner to make my home be available to the general tenant marketplace. And I still see this because, like in Oregon, for example, we manage properties in Oregon as well. Like, they don't use the MLS there. In fact, they don't want brokers to be property managers and property managers to be brokers. They want to keep a clear line of separation there. And there's probably good reasons for that, but the unintended outcome is it's hurt the landlords accessibility or to be able to be competitive with the big marketing companies and marketing their apartment complexes. Because now the individual tenant or potential tenant is going to be has to go to each home individually and set appointments with each individual broker or landlord to see them, instead of having one realtor show them 10 properties and provide access to them. So the efficiency of the marketplace is vastly different. And I love this law of unintended consequences. And it's impossible. No one has the best crystal ball, but to be able to look forward and say, okay, the very law change that caused buyer broker agency is the very thing that's causing the discomfort of what's going to happen next in the process of realtors with the new lawsuit that just came out. What are the unintended consequences going to be? What, in changing the system again, or not being definitive from a national picture of what way, the lawsuit isn't about this is the way it should go. They're just saying that's the way it shouldn't go.
Right.
So whatever way gets adopted of this is the way it should happen going forward, which is going to be interesting because obviously you can't have price collusion amongst brokers, but is process collusion a thing? Or is this something where the brokers are going to have to get together and say, this is how we're going to collectively approach handling the new system based on the new settlement?
Yeah. You said a lot there. I think one, this is proposed. We all think it's going to happen in July. If you ask me, and I'm speaking very plainly and factually, I don't think anything really changes. And I think we're back in the same place, because you said the unintended consequences. The unintended consequences, I think, for the rental market, I don't think you have any, because I don't think anyone cares about the rental market, because this is clearly a lawsuit, meaning like consumer doesn't care about it. And the reason they don't care about it is because this has everything to do with sales, and we're talking a much higher dollar amount. If I'm you, or if I'm your people, it's very easy for me to be like, you're just going to pay me. And in fact, I like that. I like it. Like, I like the fact, so an unintended consequence is now, well, an intended consequence, an unintended consequence for us, for a real estate agent helping someone in the context that you were speaking, is I now charge a fee to help you find a place instead of relying on that person. I think that's cool, because I think it really allow you to have professionals working and really helping people. And I think it changes the dynamic, because we talked about, advocacy for tenants, and it's really hard to find people to do that. So I think that's a good thing. But the unintended consequence is going to be really painful that they're going to have to change is the VA loan. VA loans are out. So if you have a seller who's like, oh shit, I'm a discount broker guy now, and I'm not paying a buyer fee because now I don't have to, and you have a VA guy come up, well, because of the way it's going to be translated, assuming this hits in July, the way it's going to be translated on the ALTA, the settlement statement, it's going to be shown as a seller credit.
Yeah.
And VA cannot pay. They don't even pay a processing fee. So they cannot really take a seller credit on their loan. Like, it cannot happen. So you have VA people who are totally screwed. So they're going to have to change that. People who are 5% down, who are also having to pay their broker, who don't have excess cash, they're screwed, because if they want to negotiate a home inspection, if they want to negotiate closing costs. So these are the unintended consequences, that the buyers are really in a lot of pain. But I think for us, it's helpful, because we can help buyers with that. But that's all going to change, because there's no way that they've shot themselves in the foot. So Fannie and Freddie are going to have to change it. And the other thing that is very interesting about it is that all this stuff is changing with the lending world and Fannie and Freddie because of this. But buyers are the ones who are most impacted. And I would think sellers who are going to be even more impacted, because now, and this is the big shift, and let's just be very, very honest. You have agents who offer a 3% commission, then you have agents who offer 2.5%, and then you have these agents who offer 2%. 2% are like builders. 2.5%, I would say, is more the standard in this industry. Sometimes there's 2.75 and there's 3%, right? I operate, my average is probably just under 3%, right? But I'm really across the board, I charge I'm a 3% agent, right? Meaning that's what I charge for my buyer brokers. That's what I charge my sellers. We give out 6. If a seller offers at 3%, the seller has to realize now he's not offering it to the agent. He is offering that to the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before it was not interpreted like that. So I would say it would almost incentivize sellers to offer more of a commission because it's no longer directly going to me. I mean, it's coming there, but it's going to that buyer because the buyer is looking at that because now they're thinking about financing that.
Yeah.
And they can't finance it and they don't have enough money to.
That's
so
right.
If the seller's offering me this credit now, well, I want to be paying more as a seller. Whereas before, maybe I wouldn't. So there's so many little nuances to it. But the indirect like you said, buyers are going to get hurt, which means they're going to really need top agents to guide them, who have connections to lenders, to everything, and the proper people. And then sellers really need to be able to have the conversation with someone who can explain it to them to weigh the pros and cons. I'm not saying that every seller should offer 3.5 or 4% to try and get a buyer. It's not what I'm saying. However,
one of my favorite things, the old adage in real estate is, or cliche I should say, is location, 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 right? And part of what we're talking about today is like there's all these different perspectives and ways to look at things, and it's not about location, location, location. It's about negotiation, 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 and it's going to become even more the wild west of negotiation now, and which means you're going to want a professional that understands all the variables to negotiate upon, and when you're a buyer and a seller. So in some ways, this settlement creates more emphasis on realtors that understand the alternatives, solutions, the different variables to negotiate on. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you see as some of those critical variables, what people will be negotiating on, coming out of what used to be a standard way of approaching this? Now there's going to be a lot more ways to approach this. So, what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So my favorite thing that I've seen thus far is not it's not come from me. Our boy Ryan Serhant out of New York. Shout out to my girl Abby out there at Serhant. They're really high level over there. He was on the Morning Squawk and he said this, and anyone who saw it loved it. He said that great service is expensive. And he said bad service will cost you a fortune. And that's really how we operate. And we as professionals have to kind of stick by that code. We have to understand the level of service we provide. So I think that is going to be like the forefront, where we as professionals really have to be able to understand how we operate and what we're really going to do. Where sometimes we don't think about it. We just get into the mode. We're like, I got you. Mm-hmm. Come on, let's go. And we get it done and everyone's happy and we can work at a really high level. But now there's a little bit of like, well, let's dial it back, right? And because I've thought about it. I was like, am I really worth this much? How much is it? So we all think about it. But the nuances that you're talking about and how you can really look at it, and I think what you're getting to is everyone's thinking, oh, the real estate commission's gone. 6% is out the window, right? So what's funny about this lawsuit is that commissions have always been negotiable.
That's right. That's right.
They've always been negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And and everyone has standards and levels on how they operate. So I think it's now just brought to the surface. And I think the benefit of this is there's more transparency across the board. And I think transparency across the board helps everyone, because I don't want to be working with someone who doesn't want to work with me. Right?
Yeah. Well, also more transparency with higher quality of service. Now we're talking about a value magnification of the profession of the realtor, right? To have be a great service but not be transparent is not necessarily a value proposition. To be able to have a lot of transparency but not a lot of quality of service. Like, okay, I can
Thanks.
do, yeah, what's that worth?
Yeah.
But to combine the two is a real powerful thing. So, one of these unintended consequences of this NAR settlement, you actually alluded to it earlier, which is, it's going to sharpen the professionals and how they approach the business. But it's also going to shake out the people that don't deliver a good value proposition because they're not very transparent or they're not very skilled in the services that they offer.
100%.
So, I think a positive unintended, I guess you would call it an unintended benefit, not a consequence.
It's a total unintended benefit, because there are, I mean, how many times have you heard, and you've heard it, my sister's cousin that just moved from Nebraska, her aunt got her real estate license, and they're close friends, and she actually knows that the neighborhood that you're thinking about moving, you should use her.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I'm like, okay.
I'm so tired of neighborhood specialist is the only thing to hang your hat on.
Yeah. And so that's the game, and it works because of this. Now that I'm thinking about this, it works because, I'm a buyer, I don't need to pay anything. Well, what buyers also don't know, and this is a shout out to my friend Maureen, because I want to give credit to where it's due, because it's fun talking to everyone, talking to you and hearing everyone's perspective about this. Maureen Weaver, she's like, it's the cost to get in. It doesn't, the buyer is going to have to pay to get in. They're the ones bringing cash to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what happens? They eventually then go sell that house. So they're going to be on the other side. So it's all like, you pay, you bring the money to the table. You think you are getting paid by the seller, but really you're the one bringing the cash.
That's right.
So who's really paying, right? And then most people are going to sell that home.
Yep.
Right. And so then you're going to sell it, and you're going to be the one offering the commission. It all comes around full circle. So I think what they created in 1993 makes a lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense. And I don't think anyone's going to feel great. I think what people are talking about now, and everyone's freaking out about because they just think about themselves, which is silly, is like, the people are just going to go work directly with sellers. Well, that is still happening.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. You know who does it a lot? Commercial guys.
Well, sure.
Commercial real estate guys love just going directly.
Yeah.
And they operate like that. That's fine. But a lot of people don't anymore. And so I don't see it changing. I think it helping what you said. I think it's going to wash out people who are not true professionals, meaning part-timers,
mm-hmm.
who just think, I watched a TV show and I'm cute and pretty and my teeth are white or whatever, and I dress nice and I can do this. I think they're gone. I think people like me who this is how we feed our families, this is how we save for retirement. We continue to get better and understand how to really make people feel more comfortable and taken care of through the process. And we continue to kind of build our referral partners, our networks, our strategic groups of who works around us to take care of these people, because there's nuances now that you have to tackle. So I think ultimately it's a good thing. It is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think where it comes back to, though, I think it's just kind of back to where it always was. And like you said, we're going to get rid of dead weight, because people always talk about how many realtors there are and how many people you're up against. Well,
yeah.
At the end of the day, we're up against the people who are doing it full time.
Yeah, well, there's going to be there's going to be plenty of changes. There's going to be solutions and unintended consequences and benefits that we don't know about right now. I think what's interesting is to see how it affects everybody a little bit differently. And one of my focuses is I run a property management company, not just I run the leading property management company in the DMV
Massive.
region, and we're really attuned to tenant psychology, to landlord psychology. And, in our region, we use the MLS, and the new MLS policies, how they they're affected by the sales settlement with NAR.
I'm interrupting. You want to know how this can help you?
Yeah, please.
I figured it out.
All right.
So you're going to have to spend a little bit more money on your website, because you can do everything from your website now. You realize that?
Yeah.
Meaning the MLS fee that you can no longer put on there.
Right.
If they do hit rentals, which TBD. And do they hit sales? But now you funnel everything to your website.
Yeah.
So did you think about that?
Well, I mean,
so that helps you.
We're fortunate enough to have both the quality reputation in our industry that people do look for us directly to rent higher end properties with us.
Yep.
However, I don't want to lose the efficiency that the MLS provided in the past.
How are you losing the efficiency of what the MLS provided?
Well,
in your brain, your concern.
My concern is that there'll be less realtors that are willing to show rentals today or in the future than in the past, as a result of not knowing what their compensation, or not being willing to ask the tenant for their compensation.
I'm going to help you. I as someone who's now completely dismissed from that, I don't really do that, and I just provide service to people. I'm helping a guy out now to look at rentals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't pay anything, and really the rental agent shouldn't be paid much. I don't I don't think they should, because who does all the work in the rental? The listing agent. They draw up the lease. The rental agent doesn't draw up a lease.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's not how I did it, because it's
No.
like the landlord's the one controlling it,
That's
right?
right.
So he's doing the lease. He did the pictures. He got the property ready. He did the market research. Essentially, I'm just driving around, walking into a place, and then of course, that's what's happening. I'm opening doors and I'm doing that, and I'm helping you with the neighborhood. And then how skilled is that buyer or tenant rep understanding the lease?
Right.
They probably aren't, because they're probably salespeople, have never looked at a lease, and they're just trying to get $1.
Right.
That's the truth. It's the truth. I'm not being a dick.
No.
And
Well,
so
many realtors don't understand rentals the same as they understand the sales.
they don't understand basic business license. They don't understand this. They don't understand that. They don't understand, all the little legalities and nuances that really would protect their clients, show value. So I think it would be very easy. I think it's harder now, because really, what do you pay someone? 20, 25, 30%, 35? I don't think anyone's paying 50 anymore. And I think incentivizing it.
Yeah.
So I would say I don't think you're gonna have an impact. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Just being in it. And I would think now this is going to force people like me to actually just be like, hey, listen, I'm just going to charge you 1 month's rent.
Well, what I think it goes back to is what we said earlier, is the emphasis of quality of service
Mm-hmm.
and transparency, especially from the listing of the rental side, is for the landlord to understand what they're paying for, what they get, and how we find tenants. And then what happens, it's one of the big differences that not a lot of people see in rental and property management is the transaction is the beginning. It's not the end once the transaction is complete. In other words, once the property is rented, that's when we get started.
That's when we're out.
And
the tenant rep,
the tenant rep is totally gone, right?
Yep.
So, in property management, it's like in rentals, it's like, no, the transaction isn't the end. It's the very beginning of a big body of work.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the other things, you mentioned earlier is that this litmus, what are the litmus tests of quality of service? We talk about transparency, but also, bad service can cost you a lot more. And even if the service is more expensive, but it's a higher quality, it could end up costing you a lot less. Am I on the track?
You said it right. Well, think about it this way. Let's say you want to, I'll use this example because I was dealing with this with my wife. This is not her experience, but this is why we're dealing with the people we're dealing with. If you go get dental work done,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to the guy down the street. It's cheap. Takes dental insurance. They'll even file the insurance for you. Well, what's that going to look like? What's that going to feel like? What are the risks, right? Then what happens? You're in pain. Your shit's messed up. Looks bad, right? It hurts. Then what do? You're in so much pain. You don't care how much money it costs. You open up a credit card and you go see the specialist.
Yeah, right.
So it's the same thing. You go to the specialist first. And it's a mindset that's been created by our culture, because everyone's trying to find value, and the way they interpret value is they interpret value is cost, discounts, and deals.
Right.
But really, value is like, how about we just do it right? And no one understands time now. The people who understand time are people with lots of money.
Yeah. Yes.
People with lots of money, they understand time. They pay full price. They can still kind of haggle, but anyways, they just want to get it done. And I think more of us, just as people, as professionals, need to start valuing our time, because I think we all have something to really offer.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just get out of here, the phone and all the deals.
This is the other thing is services are not commodities, which is why you can't compare it on cost alone.
Yeah.
For someone to say, what is your property management fee? Well, first of all, all of my clients aren't on the same property management fee.
Yeah.
What I charge for a $10,000 a month rental, it would not be proportional to what I charge for a $3,000 a month rental. So, on a percentage basis, it's not linear. There's more of a parabola there. And
parabola. That's a good word. I don't even know that one.
What we're really trying to do is match the service scope of work to what we need to charge for our time for that work. And
so you're trying to work on an hourly rate built in. So you kind of figure out what your hourly rate is.
Well,
are you saying that? Are you saying that product changes? The $10,000 product and the $3,000 product. There's a different There's a different amount of service or
Yeah,
level of. Okay, got
there
it.
are.
Got it. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that on a percentage basis it would look. I mean, it costs more for us to manage a higher end home and a bigger home, but it's not percentage wise the same. In other words, it's actually a lower percentage but a higher fee.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to match the actual, instead of trying to one size fit all under a percentage fee on management, we're trying to match.
That's probably what makes you different.
Well, and also we don't look at it hourly. I look at it annually.
You look at annual.
Because there's a seasonal element in property management that what we do in the first 60 days is different than what we do in the next 60 days, which is different than what we do when we're doing inspections and winterizations and lease renewal process. So we really try to look at things from we're delivering not just this transaction of renting the home, but we're delivering the renting the home and the next year of work after that.
Yeah. So I have a question for you about the settlement. I've asked about this. I haven't got an answer yet just because everyone's been so busy. Do you know that this is going to affect rentals? Because it's obviously what they're talking about is clearly sales. Now we operate the exact same way in the MLS. It's 100% the same. There's different fields, but it's like everything's the exact same. So I was wondering the same thing. Like, so do you have any inklings from your people, from your crew, like whatever peers, colleagues you have that this is going to happen to you? And the reason I ask is because my understanding is that it's only sales. And what I said earlier, I'm like, if they come after you guys now, that's the dumbest thing in the world.
Well, I think it's harder because there's a lot of smaller players in the residential property management rental industry. There's so many different types of property management. Are you coming after HOA property managers? Are you coming after?
There's two types of property managers, Tommy.
Okay.
There's Chambers Theory, and there's everybody else.
There's the level I am on, and there's a whole nother level that I'm going to too. I'm not happy with that. Yeah. But thank you.
But yeah. But do you have any inklings that that's going to change, or are you just assuming because it's?
Well, I think there's two answers to that, and both are affirmative in that. Yes, there should be some impact or effect on the rental market, and B. There will be. In other words, like if there is no impact, there should be. That's what I'm saying. And I also think that there will be some kind of an impact. It's not always clear what that is, but just by affecting the market psychology of buyers and sellers, it automatically changes the effect on tenant and landlord psychology as well.
My opinion is this too on it, just like looking at it, how I look at it. I think a lot of people you're just going to be doing more both sides of it. That's Possibly. What I think. And I think naturally landlords already do in today's world because of what you mentioned, because of Bright, MLS, Zillow. People are just going straight to the landlord because I think it's very hard for people to establish a relationship with a real estate agent to go do a $2,000 deal. They're not really doing it because they're like I'm not worried about it. I don't care. I'm going to rent. It's like whatever. And why would I, so I just think that's a kind of, in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I think the people who are looking for help are either looking at sales and then they get pulled back to rentals because they're like, shit, I can't buy. And it really makes sense for me to rent this guy, this real estate agent, him or her really helped me out. I'm looking right. And then they continue the relationship and they help out and they put them in a rental. They maintain a relationship because we're providing a service. Our service is long-term, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to, if it's the right relationship, we've kind of gone through the process. We'll help them get in there. But I think a lot of people do come. You probably have you have all the data. Don't people come straight to you guys now?
Yeah.
Most of the time?
So I tend to be an optimist. So, but let me shift gears just a little bit on subject.
Oh yeah.
But
you want to get negative on me?
Yeah.
I like this.
I'm going to take a doomsday view for a second.
Let's go.
And then I'd love to hear your reaction to it. And also if you could provide an optimistic opposition to my view here.
I'd be shocked if I couldn't.
Okay. So my doomsday view here is I'll take the position where there was almost this trend going towards there's going to be fewer and fewer owners or landlords or buyers in the world, and there's going to be more and more massive corporate landlords.
Yep.
That trend already started years ago with
Yeah.
a build to rent movement, which has only gained momentum, where now big time corporate entities are not just investing in institutional investors. They're not just investing in apartment complexes and multifamilies. Now they're buying neighborhoods of detached homes and building neighborhoods of townhomes only for the purpose of renting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this point of view where, okay, well, maybe the future, if this trend, continues, that maybe in the future we're going to end up with everybody renting and nobody owning, except for massive institutions if they continue to buy up real estate and rent it out. And I think that was a thought that was gaining some speed as that trend continued. And then, now with this settlement, what I find very interesting is now there's more pressure on the buyer potentially to come up with more cash than before to buy a property, because if I want professional representation now as a buyer, I'm supposed to be paying for that service with my realtor directly. Unless that realtor is really skilled at negotiating that for this to come as a seller credit now, which you brought some great insight on, there is more pressure on a buyer to buy in the marketplace. Their interest rates are up. More cash is required if you have to pay for your representation. You still have the build to rent movement. So the doomsday view here is all these little and big changes in the marketplace. They're all kind of feeding this beast of, our future is not individual home ownership. Our future is institutional ownership of real estate, and we're all renters in it. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on if that happens, I mean, the numbers. How much real estate do these people own in the U.S. right now? What's the percentage?
The institutional investor, It's a small percentage, even though it's a trend.
Is it?
It's under 20% of the real estate owned.
Under 20, which is kind of a big number, actually.
Yeah,
it's not a small number.
I'm including all encompassing real estate.
Well, then
not
I
just
think
residential.
the positive spin is the American dream will have to change. Yeah, I mean, we can all change our dreams.
Yeah,
I think that's a benefit. I could care less. I'd make a lot of money if someone bought my house. One of these guys. I mean, real estate's going up. Yeah.
Investor bought.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
So if you own a piece of the rock, you feel like, hey.
Yeah, I think it's this way, and this is probably how you think about it. I think the positive of that, if you're buying into that and you think that's happening, which I don't think is crazy, because it's just like the split between the 1% and the poor now is like it's just getting bigger and bigger. And I would say that if anything, what I was thinking about is like, shit, I should probably buy more real estate. And I think that's the play. You buy more real estate. Like, I think if that's what you really believe, I think the upside to that is like how you make a positive is maybe change the way you're diversifying your portfolio and just see what you can buy. Yeah. But I mean, it'll be interesting. It could happen, but if it does, I think it'll be fine.
Well, it maybe just shifts a few percentage points. Again, maybe it goes from 20 to 30%, whatever it is, to 30%, and not that still 70% of. Yeah,
but I think someone's trying to pass a law on that. I mean, the government will stop that. It's the government. They'll step in and. Well, really, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting, and I think my positive spin is I would be a happy renter.
So what about it in the opposite? What if we went to a world where it was 100% ownership and nobody rented anything?
100% ownership and nobody rented anything.
Everybody owned the unit that they were living in.
Is there a country that operates like that?
I don't know.
I just don't know if you had intel that I didn't, because you're kind of in this world. 100% ownership. I think people would be a lot nicer to one another. That's what I think.
That's a cool outcome. Why?
The reason I think that is because they would have to have responsibility for something. And if they had responsibility for something,
They respect others a little bit more.
There's a way to be humbled and there's a way to be grounded because you may need help.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's the best. That's my first response.
Okay. I can play with that. Also, then, are there ways to increase responsibility no matter whether you're ownership or you're renting in a way that produces that outcome, which would be a cool psychology experiment.
It would be. It would be. I mean, I'm sure there's experiments that you could do.
Let's get that transparent, clear version of what you're seeing for your buyers, your sellers, the marketplace with this NAR settlement, with this effect of what you're seeing right now, psychology trends, everything else. Like, what do you think is the impact on the buyer today, and what do you think are the unintended consequences for the buyer? And then let's flip and have that discussion on the seller side. But based on that NAR settlement, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, so I think that everyone is of course looking at the buyer, and also everyone's looking at the realtor. So I think they're looking at the realtor first, and they're saying real estate agents are done; they're not making any more money. And then two, it's the buyer, and then no one's even talking about the seller. So we're going to take myself and throw me out of the way. We're going to get straight to the buyer. The buyer is now potentially, assuming July hits and they put all of this into play and there's no commission on the MLS because that's what the proposed change is. And the other proposed change is how
no commission advertised on the MLS.
No commission advertised. That's one. And then part two is that buyer agency will have to be signed and put into the system. Well, that doesn't change for me because that's how I operate with all my buyers. They sign a buyer agency, and we figure out how much I charge, how it works, and I explain it all to them. So that doesn't change for me. The only thing that changes for me is that I see the MLS doesn't show, and that's assuming this hits in July. The other part too is how the buyer agency is paid.
That's right.
That's really interesting because of the protection of sellers, because sellers really got hosed these last 3 years. Oh my God, poor sellers, right? They are now not going to be paying. It won't be a seller debit. Right. It will be a seller credit to the buyer, which affects the buyer's purchasing power.
That's right.
That's how buyers are impacted. I'm not going to nerd out on that. But really what buyers need to focus on is they need to really work with somebody who's a full-time professional, who's dialed in, who's doing it all the time. And they're going to have access to lenders. They're going to have access to home inspectors, to property management partners, to maybe even insurance people, to contractors, and understanding all the different nuances. Whether they 5%, 10%, 20, or they jumbo, they FHA, or they VA. I'm not going to get into VA, but VA people are going to have a real challenge, and Fannie and Freddie are going to have to make changes too. Waiting for those to come out. That's buyers. The sellers are the ones no one's talking about, and the sellers I think are the ones that are going to need the most help, because the way the sellers are going to look at it is something to the tune of, well, I don't have to pay anymore if they've read this. Well, they never had to pay. They never had to pay.
Right? It was financed in.
They never had to pay. Ever, 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 ever. And they've always had the option to say no. And there's real estate agents they could hire to work for a lower fee. And I think that's going to stay the course. But now I would say this is that our sellers more incentivized now to offer the highest commission that they can. That's up to them, right? They own that. To incentivize now the buyer, because it now is directly impacting the buyer. And I think that's a shift that'll be interesting to watch and interesting to see. And sellers need to know that. I love this. I love all this change. I love all this news because it just allows us to have these conversations up front. Super transparent. It's all on the table. Is this going to be a good fit? You don't want to date someone for more than a month or two.
That's right.
That's it. You're like, this is going to work. It's not out. And we can do that really quickly now and really figure out if it's a good fit, because ultimately we want to be a good fit for all our clients. I'm not trying to bamboozle you into signing a 6% agreement. And I know people who've done deals and they don't even know how much they pay. I would say that this is how the lawsuit started. They had a good relationship. They said, use this realtor. The realtor sent them the listing agreement. They never read the listing agreement. It just went to DocuSign. They didn't look at it. And they just thought that that's what they had to pay, 6%. They had no idea who it was going to.
Yeah, they thought it was standard, even though it was always negotiable.
And then they found out that they paid the buyer agent. And that deal was probably really shitty.
Right.
And they got pissed. And so what is that? It's transparency. It's right, and just sliding stuff in. And so I think we'll get rid of that, which I think is just great for the industry.
That's really cool. It's funny. Two things came up to mind when you were talking about, hey, if this isn't working out, like, we're breaking up. I don't want to continue to work, especially if it's not transparent. If I don't
Mm.
know how it's going to work. But what also it reminded me of was the fact that as a realtor, especially in 2021, especially in 2022, that the market was so hot. You would work with a buyer, and there were 20 offers on a property.
Mm-hmm.
And the really sharp realtors were helpful, providing every edge they could to their client on how to make their offer competitive. But the reality is, if you're always one of 20 offers, you're not really winning every offer as a realtor, even if your buyers are willing to step up and be more competitive. So in other words, there's oftentimes this work that a realtor does, especially on buyer agency, that never gets compensated
Mm-hmm.
for until the deal closes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how often that got brought up in the NAR settlement, but I hope that was under consideration of, hey, it's not that the price is too high or too little, it's that it's negotiable is the point.
Yep.
Because realtors are working hard out there, and even if you are a good service provider, sometimes you strike out on 7 offers before you help a client land one.
100%.
So that was one thing that came up. The other thing is, we talk about negotiation of fees, is one of the things I find really funny is when a seller says, hey, I want to negotiate my commission. Yeah, they should be able to negotiate their commission. But it's, again, not just choosing the broker that's willing to do it for less. It's understanding how the broker negotiates their value in that discussion is super critical. It's an opportunity for the seller to both negotiate their price and value, but also to see how this listing broker is going to defend protecting the sales value of their home if they choose that broker to list their home. Because if they're not good at negotiating and protecting their own commission, how good are they going to be protecting the value of your house when they're selling it with you, right?
100%.
So,
well said.
I think those two things are interesting insights. It's buyers agents. It's not like it was always ever easy. Like, there was plenty of times where they were working hard and not getting paid, and then you got this seller that now is like, okay, maybe there's going to be more awareness. That seller, hey, I can negotiate my commission. It doesn't mean that getting it for less is the right service choice. It means that how your interaction goes with the broker you're interviewing to list your property is an indicator of how they're going to hold the value proposition of your home. Like, how they negotiate their own value is also how they're going to negotiate yours. And to make that connection is a different way of looking at it.
Would you rather stay at a Holiday Inn or a Four Seasons?
I'd make a tent on top of a mountain somewhere.
There you go. How much would it cost to get to the mountain? How would you want to arrive?
But the service aspect, what you're saying, I'd pay for a nice service.
I think we all would. I think we all would. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy talking about it, enjoy thinking about it. And I think it really will make it easier for all of us, except for buyers right now. For buyers right now, it's a little overwhelming, a little challenging. I don't think that stays the course because it's so like unintended consequences. Like, man, they really shot themselves in the foot here. Like, holy crap, this has been a seller's market. It's going to continue to be a seller's market for as long as we know. Oh, we're really going to protect sellers now. Like, they missed it. They'll clean it up. There's no way that anyone looks at this and goes, oh, cool. Yeah, this guy that just served our country for however many years who wants to buy a house. Yeah, he can't buy one.
Because he's got a VA loan.
Because he's got come on. And VA loans they already come with their challenges. Yeah. Like, just naturally in a very hot market like this. Mm-hmm. So, I don't see it panning out. So I'm optimistic. And I'm optimistic because I have every right to be, because the evidence shows that they just didn't get this 100% right.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you pointed out the VA buyer. It is interesting how many one-size-fits-all rules changes come out that actually have negative impact on mm-hmm. military landlords, State Department landlords, people that are transitional representing our country, and yet they're negatively impacted by one size fits all rules that get stamped down
Yeah.
sometimes. Even though they're government employees, sometimes the government stamp on what's best for housing negatively impacts their own team, if you will, their own employees.
Yeah. No,
So
100%. And I'm going to ask you one question though.
please.
How hard do you think it would be to charge 1 month's rent to help someone find a house? Because that gets into money too, right? There's
Yeah.
they're $10,000 renter.
Yeah.
Right? They probably don't have a problem paying
Yeah.
that, guess. And then there's the $2,500 renter. Do you kind of working with your team on that conversation? And
Again,
are
there
you-
is no standard fee.
exactly.
Right? And again, we try to look at things from a body of
Yeah.
work and scope of work. Like we work with a lot of foreign embassies that are
Yep.
come to the area, and they're like, hey, we want to rent a property for 3
Doesn't
years.
Canada pay?
They do.
Canada
They're
pays.
wise to.
Yeah,
as
they're
well,
smart.
because they also have they pay for a house hunting trip. So the family comes down. They've got 5 days
Yep.
to see what's available and try to choose something, and they got all these other deadlines they're trying to meet, and to try and move out of the country, even though Canada US isn't a massive change, it's still a pretty big change.
Yep.
You're moving your family or even yourself. You don't know the area you're getting into. You're basing it on the recommendations of your peers that you spoke to, and yet they might be like, oh, you should rent in this neighborhood. It's the best neighborhood for me, but there may not be anything available in that neighborhood. So
Yeah.
now what, right? So yes, to work with a professional who is astute into the leasing process, especially for the nuances involved with embassy representation, because the embassies have their own overlays on the leases, their own addenda.
They have their own diplomatic clauses,
Yeah.
all that. Yep.
And then they got to figure out, is the landlord willing to work with those things, or how do those things communicate to the landlord?
You got to put alarms in for some people.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So there's so many nuances to these things that to not work with a professional would be a miss. I mean, it would make the process really hard for them.
Total mess.
So
Have you ever? So I'm going to say this.
they're wise in that they're willing to pay for that service because they see the value in it, right?
And you've seen this. I've seen 2 people try to work out a deal amongst themselves without representation.
Oh, sure.
I was the only
I mean, it
person.
happens
I was the
every
only
day.
person really representing.
Uh-huh.
And then they got to talking, and it's like it's tough. It's tough.
Well,
And the deal falls apart, and it's always because of the person generally who is unrepresented, and because there's no pause, there's no understanding,
perspective.
there's no, it's like boom
Yeah.
boom boom, and it's just like okay, and it's very interesting to see. So I've seen it firsthand.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it firsthand, and I'm like, man. So this is why, this is why we get to, help a lot of people, and we can charge what we charge, because
Yeah.
this is a complete mess.
Well, yeah. I mean, otherwise, right? Like everybody speaks from the context of their own perspective. I do.
Yeah.
You do. We all do. But when we're talking about a professional service in an industry, right? The advice you bring, what you speak to, is a testament to you representing hundreds of buyers, you representing hundreds of listings, you representing the full context of your experience. For me, like I'm representing my experience represents thousands of tenants, thousands of properties over the last 25 years. It's not like, oh, I heard that it's bad to rent to dogs because they can do damage to the property. Is that true? In some cases, it's true. But if you go off of one person's one-time experience, sharing their perspective versus seeing things over thousands of properties over 25 years, I would say there's more to it than just saying dogs are good or bad. Or cats are good or bad. It's not that simple. Like there's a whole, here we are with parabolas again. There's a whole standard deviation curve of risk when it comes to pets. And I'm very attuned to it. Why? Because that is the context of my experience over thousands of properties in this area over the years. So I see the risk differently than someone who has one experience running one time to somebody with one dog. And on the converse side to this is you say, wow, it's a mess. Yeah, sometimes when landlords and tenants or buyers and sellers deal directly with one another, the deal blows up because they don't always know what they're talking about because maybe they're making judgments. There's no opportunity to pause and reflect without understanding the full perspective that a professional brings to the table. Well, I've also seen the opposite. And when I say that is I see sometimes the lucky ones are the ones that the deals blow up. Because especially in the rental world, when a nice tenant really wants to sweet talk a landlord and it's a honeymoon phase and they're talking directly and it's, oh, wow, of course I want to rent, to this person. They're so nice. And they offered to bring me coffee from Starbucks.
Are you saying they're getting a little manipulative?
Manipulation into the deal. Now, again, there's a big difference. When the sales transaction done, the sales transaction's done. When that property is rented and you said, oh, I felt good about this tenant. And that was what your perspective that you brought to the table, and you let them honeymoon you into saying yes to a lease with them. Now you've got to deal with that tenant and what they really are like over the course of the next year or two.
It's tough business,
man.
So
sometimes the good ones are the ones that
fall apart. Yeah.
Because there needs to be more objective criteria than how you feel about them from your limited perspective as a landlord. Maybe you've rented your property 3 times before. Great. I've rented properties like yours 3,000 times before, and it's a different perspective. So Danny, give me what's the takeaway you want people to know? Okay, here's the settlement. And then we talked about all these different perspectives and questions, but what's hey, if you're not going to take away anything else, know this about the change that's coming and about who you should be looking to represent you in your next big real estate financial transaction here. With all this change going on, what's that takeaway you want people to have?
Well, if this shakes out the way that I think it should shake out, anyone who they work with will be just fine because all the goons will be gone.
The goons will be
gone. The goons will be gone. That's one. But I think the most important is if the professional, the real estate advisor, the real estate agent, the executive vice president, whatever they call themselves, the licensee, who's going to guide you on this path. If they are talking about themselves, back it up and run it. But if they are asking and talking about you and trying to understand you, I would say continue that conversation because you're getting to a good spot. Because I think what people are missing with this is we're making it about us and, oh no, I'm still going to be paid and look how much I do. And you see the TikTok, like the template, remember I was talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm more than a door
opener.
I
do that.
It's like, shut up, stop, right? People don't care about what I do. They want to know what I'm going to do for them. So that's the number one thing. If you can talk to whoever that real estate agent is and they can explain and listen to what you want, help you get what you want, and explain how they can help you do that, I think you're on the right path. But if someone's just like me, I'm like, run. And I've seen it. And I've done it. I've gone into listing appointments and just said, hey, look how great I am. Look at all the stuff I can do. They don't give a shit. So I think that's the big thing, because I think there's a lot of agents on the defense right now.
Yep.
That's why I think it's the most important.
I'd add to that, and I'd add to I don't know if comfort level is the right word, but I'd add to the transparency of the conversation. In other words, if you have a professional, a real estate professional that tries to glaze past that and go back to, oh, this is what I do, or glaze past this is how it affects you, or this is how we're going to approach your buying or selling experience together, and they try to take it somewhere else, that means that they're not willing to be transparent, or they're uncomfortable to be transparent about it. And you have the agents that are willing to be transparent, that you will see a lot more value difference in those discussions, because at least they're being open with what they're talking about. You can find the better match for you as a buyer. So I would say yes. That's a yes and for me. I want that conversation to be more open and transparent. Does this real estate professional I'm talking to understand what my needs are and how they're affected by this potential change that's happening right now?
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, 100%. Transparency is key. And then we also have to realize too, they understand the dollar amount. Like, our clients can do math. So it's like sometimes you throw a percentage, you're like, oh, they don't. I'm like, no, they know. And in some of these circumstances, it's a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 6-figure deals and up. Like that's the type of real estate we deal with.
Yep.
Like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, your house that appreciated to $500,000. Well, guess what? 125 of that's coming back to get this deal done. We're talking about a list price. So I think that's the other thing in context that we're up against, which makes real estate agents afraid, right? They start getting afraid. So when you see people on the defense, it's very hard. It's very hard, I think, to get the connection,
that openness
that you want.
yeah,
Yeah, the openness,
yeah.
and it's a tough business. It's like you freak out. You're like, oh, how am I?
Mm-hmm.
What makes me worth this, and all this stuff. But I think the transparency is key, and I think that I look forward to that because it'll also help us be a better fit with one another.
That's right.
Right? Like, and everyone wants that.
Yeah.
No one wants to fight through a deal, and no one wants to work with someone who's not real, right? Because everyone's like, oh, if someone says they'll buy your house for $3 million, I'm assuming your house is not worth $3 million or anywhere near it. I assume you live in a modest house for maybe, somewhere between 1 and 2. But if someone offers you that all of a sudden you're interested, even though you were never a seller.
Right.
And so those are the people that we want to kind of we want to work with real people who are very dialed in, so we're not wasting time.
Yes. Yeah. That time is a big thing because it's also their time and your time.
Exactly.
Right. So
100%.
And, to treat it like an interview, this is a relationship. One thing I know about both rentals and the sales market and real estate, this is very personal. We're talking about somebody's home. We're talking about the most personal space we're talking about is the home that they're going to be living in. And that journey to get that home, whether you're renting it or buying it, there's personal preferences and all these variables. And to imagine not interviewing someone who is going to be helping you get something that's so personal to you, to me, that's a miss. So, I say, yes, interview, find the people that are open and honest and transparent, and they can describe their value proposition in the process.
Yeah, I love it. Be able to ask questions and have your questions, like you said, have them answered.
Yeah.
Not redirected or taken off into some other strange land.
Danny, thanks for coming on. Great to see you again.
Always.
And looking forward to the next time already.
Awesome. Tommy, thank you.